I'll buy you a plastic cup. Or you can use one of mine. I have plenty of plastic cups.
No, we must have the
ever-present metal flanking.
Metal cup. Wait, okay, there it is.
Before we start this, is it Hanabi or Hanabi?
Hanabi.
Okay.
Everybody says Hanabi. Is that correct? Who knows?
I've heard
We need to ask a Japanese person.
Do I know any Japanese?
Alright. Hanabi?
No.
Yes.
Welcome guests.
Welcome guests to the exit. Alright, so...
Did you start it?
Yeah, of course I started it already, because you gotta have these extra bloopers features.
Are you sure? Do you know how to use an iPhone?
I know how to hit record on a... This is what we go through before, ladies and gentlemen. Do I know how to use an iPhone?
I don't want to talk for 45 minutes just to have it go to waste.
I mean, if you want to, and you should actually, so the viewers can know that you will get up and double check. When I said I already hit record. Oh, what did you find out? Yes, you found out that...
I don't even know how you tell if it's recording.
Look at the numbers running on the bottom in the middle.
There's no numbers.
There's not? We'll tap on the screen.
Oh, never mind. Oh, okay,
you see the numbers.
We are recording.
Yes,
right,
we're
cool.
recording. Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Alright, let's start from scratch. I don't have to edit that out.
Oh, no, you don't. No, that needs to stay in. Welcome, everybody, to Eternally Bored, the off-the-cuff beginning of the podcast edition. This is the sort of the preliminary behind-the-scenes episode.
Our producer is walking a dog.
Yes,
this is what happens when the producer's walking a dog.
Exactly. So, I am Charles Washington, and of course, as always, we have our host, Trey Chambers.
Hello.
And introducing with us today, a special return guest host, Abby Vasic.
Vasic?
Vasic?
Drozic?
Got to edit that out. No. Okay, I'll tell you the reason why. Abby Drozic Fitzwater. Abby. So, I work with...
you're trying to combine the two names into one.
No, I used to work... My HR person was Abby Vasic.
Oh, okay.
So, it just came out. So, there you go. Wow. Okay, so maybe we do have some edits in. Okay, try again.
Take two.
Take two.
You know, Ian likes to troll us, though. He's going to leave a lot of this in.
I'm sure. You start this time.
All right. Hello, guys. Welcome to Eternally Bored, special edition. Our producer's walking a dog. I'm your host, Trey Chambers, and this is Charles Washington, a permanent co-host, and returning is Abby Drozic Fitzwater. Did I pronounce it correct?
Yes.
Great. And today we are talking about being a cooperative co-op player. I may change the title at some point, but that's the working title of this episode. But basically, we're just going to be talking about co-op games and, you know, playing them with your friends, playing them with strangers, and just how you can make them more fun for yourself and for others. And all the various issues that go along with that. In addition, we'll talk about our top 3 co-op games of all time, and then lastly, we'll just talk about some new games we've been playing. So, to start us off with the topic du jour, we'll just throw it out there. How have your experiences been with co-op?
You want to start? Ladies
Sure.
first.
I actually like co-op games. I know not everyone does. I like co-op games. I think that co-op games are really awesome, especially with people who are newer to board gaming, because sometimes the level of competition, competitiveness in regular games can be a little bit daunting to new game players. So I have a few co-op games that I like to take to board game groups to try to lure the non-gaming folks into feeling comfortable. There are a few that work really well with that. Yes. But there are some that are also quite challenging, so I enjoy the challenging ones as well.
What are some of the ones that you use to bring new gamers in?
I really like... Of course, I'm blanking on the name right now. It's the firefighter game.
Yes.
We all blank on
No.
The firefighter game.
Yes. It's not first alert. No. It's not that.
It's a 2-word
It's from
name.
Indie Board Games.
I don't like this game. That's my excuse.
Whatever.
It's like Pandemic with fire. There's like fires spring up on the board.
You're supposed to have it written down. It's your name.
I wrote down my top 3. It's not in my top 3.
And it shouldn't be. It's not a good game.
I'm so sorry. But it is a good game for new players.
Sure, yes.
Because the rules are very easy to understand. It's easy to help the other players along a little bit if they're not sure what to do. And it's a good introduction into maybe Pandemic or slightly more advanced cooperative games.
Is it simpler than Pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's simpler than pandemic.
Yeah, I think so.
There's fewer rules and things to figure out.
Depends
Flashpoint.
Flashpoint, Fire Rescue.
Okay.
Sorry,
wow.
I didn't have it
We
written
do
down.
know things about games here on this podcast.
Thank goodness. All
Plus,
right.
there's a character who's a dog. It's adorable. You could be a dog.
I would recommend, because I don't know what it was about Flashpoint, but I didn't particularly like it. But I do like the Forbidden games, Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Island. I think those are great intro co-op games, and I actually prefer them to Pandemic just because they accomplish the same thing in a short amount of time with more blinged out components. I also like the way, especially for Forbidden Island, the way the board is like disappearing out from under you. I think that's really cool. So those would be my suggestions for gateway co-ops.
And of course, my gateway co-ops is throw you into the fires that are Hanabi, because I can teach it to you.
Yes.
Or Codenames. I think Codenames is a good gateway.
I would totally agree with that.
Co-op or team game?
Well, base is, but now there's Co-op Duet, which is a pure co-op version, which I really like. It's a new twist on the co-op formula. Is it? Nice. Yeah, actually I'm talking about it today, so I'll go into more depth later. But yeah, so there's a lot of good gateway games. I think co-ops in general kind of lend themselves to be, let's bring non-gamers into the hobby, because you're not like, let me crush you in, Dominant Species, or, some really long or really difficult strategy game, because you probably will beat most new players the first time they're playing those games, unless they're just really, have the mind for that kind of thing. But now it's like everyone's on the same team, so there's no like, you're not destroying them, and it could be a more pleasant experience for first-time players.
I would caution against Mage Knight Cooperative as a first co-op game. It's brutal. You will die.
Most people here wouldn't even, play Mage Knight competitive.
Yeah, I would just caution against Mage Knight. Period.
What? That game is awesome.
So the downtime.
When you're playing co-ops, there's several types. I was going to ask, because you have like the one where you have a big, sort of like team against the game. You have ones where it's just one person against all the other people. And then you have, like, I guess you would call it the NPC co-op, where I guess it's sort of be like Dead of Winter, where you have some people running around independently, but then you have the overall team aspect.
Yeah. And those games usually have a traitor.
Yeah, they usually have a traitor. Yes. Battlestar Galactica will fall into that as well. So I was going to ask you, which ones do you prefer?
I don't really prefer any of them. I don't really like co-ops that much. But I think of the three types, I'm lending myself more towards pure co-ops, because some interesting things have been happening in the hobby. Like, I'm not the biggest Hanabi fan, but I really appreciate the twist on the formula that it does. Not being able to communicate with your team, and I like what Spirit Island does. Obviously, I talk about that game a lot, but it's just like a really deep game. And that's something co-ops really haven't done much. I like I guess unique takes. What we're gonna be playing right after this podcast, the Exit series, which is a co-op game. You're solving puzzles together, right? Which are kind of like escape room in a box. That's a new trend also. So I think I just like the way that it's evolving into new and different things. And I also think a lot of times, a lot of them are just solving the alpha gaming problem, because that's the main problem that those team games fall into, where you mostly will always have an alpha player who will like try to lead the other players into doing what they think is best. But all of the games that I just mentioned solve that by either limiting communication or putting you under a timer like the Exit games do. Or with Spirit Island, it's just so deep, you can't really think about other players' turns. You're focused on just what you're doing. So there's lots of interesting ways to solve that problem.
See, on the other hand, I like the one-player versus type of games. I've always tried to get people to play more Descent, because I enjoy being the Dungeon Master, and also really like Catacombs for the same reason. Sort of like, you're the Dungeon Master, you're setting things up, you're able to execute, and you can make adjustments. You can also make mistakes, right, during the game as a Dungeon Master, which gives people a chance to come back, your opponents and your team. I just feel like, the only problem with those games is generally the person playing the Dungeon Master knows more about the game than the players. So it can also lead to some of the problems that you've had, where you have one really good player beating down the others. But when everything is equal, I think those are excellent type of games.
I kind of agree with Charles, I guess. I enjoy the many versus one type games. I don't like to be the one, though. So, luckily, my husband loves to be one versus all. So, we play a lot of Tragedy Looper. And he loves to be the mastermind. We have a Lord of the Rings co-op game, and he loves to be the evil people. So
and
he usually plays that role.
Jack the Ripper in Whitechapel, if I remember.
Right, yes. So I like this kind of games because I have a handy person who will always be the evil mastermind or whatever, what have you. My favorite types of co-op games are the type where there's a lot of individual autonomy in spite of being a co-op game. So I like to know information that the other players don't know, to make decisions the other players can't make. I don't necessarily want everyone to have all of the same information, because then it does turn into a most experienced player controls everything kind of deal. So I do prefer games where there's sort of a restriction of information.
Which sort of leads us to the biggest problem of co-op games, which would be like the alpha gamer, the person who wants to take control, or a group of people who take control. I remember one of the things that we were talking about originally was, how do you prevent the alpha gamer from happening in your co-op games? Trey, you have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, I just don't play those games. I don't particularly care for co-ops in general, and so if it doesn't put a unique twist on it, like I really love Pandemic Legacy, but that's because of the legacy aspects. But we certainly had a lot of shouting matches because we all tried to be the alpha player, right? When we were playing Pandemic Legacy, we were like, no, I think our team should do this. No, we should do this. No, we should do that. So it was like less of a co-op game than it was an anti-co-op game. We were like literally at each other's throats, like trying to decide what our team should do. So, yeah, that game did not solve the alpha player problem, but I loved it anyway just because of the legacy aspect.
I'm just really choosy about who I play certain games with, so there are certain people who I know that I have no interest in playing a co-op game with them, so I will be picky about who I play with. I think it can also go a long way just to discourage extra table talk. So certain games already have certain rules built into them. Hanabi, for instance, you're not really supposed to share unnecessary information, so sometimes just reminding people of those rules can cut down on the taking over the game by certain people.
I actually had three things that could help prevent the alpha player, because
he's got his own top 3 lists.
Yes, but mainly because I play with a lot of different people in a public arena, and I was just in Nebraska playing with different people as well. And I think there's three things that help the most. The first is design, which you've been alluding to with Hanabi. If you have something where the communication is limited, or one point where a player gets full control of an action, even though they can accept, suggestions from another player, that will sort of help with the alpha player quite a bit. The second is mentality, which is where, and this is, sometimes you have to say this to the people who are being alpha, is that you have to believe that every other player has an equal valuable insight. When I explain it to people who are very alpha, I try to explain it as like points of data. If you're making like $20,000 in an investment, and then someone gives you a tip to make $200,000, you should listen to that one, even though there's not a lot of proof to the otherwise. A lot of other people are saying just make $20,000 and be fine, but $200,000 is a lot more. And the final thing is like enforcement, and this is sort of in the with different people. I say the betas need to check the alphas, and one of the things that I've done quite effectively is I tell people, if you haven't listened to anyone for 30 seconds or consider that you might be wrong for 30 seconds, then maybe you're just not, just remind them. It's like, you're not infallible. Exactly. But co-op games sort of do bring out the best life skills you can have.
Yeah. Also, general advice, don't be the alpha gamer. If you have those tendencies, check yourself, and, do offer advice, but when the person doesn't take your advice, don't be insistent that they do, right? Just be like, oh, yeah, I think we should do this. And if they're like, no, actually, I think we should do this, shut up. Just like let them do it, and if it's a mistake and y'all fail, then that's fine. It's just a game. But like, don't ruin the game experience for everybody by being like, you know, I insist we do it this way. You know, taking from my example from Pandemic Legacy, we still had an amazing time, but like we could have had more fun with the game, I think, had we like been less insistent, you know, of like, my plan is right and here's why your plans are dumb and blah blah blah. You know, so sometimes you just have to chill out and enjoy the experience and not, you know, be so bent on winning. There's no money involved. Like, you don't win $1,000 prize if you win the game, you know, so just chill.
That being said, my team did go 12-1 in Pandemic Legacy, unlike Trey's, whose record will not be discussed.
We lost like 4 games, and also I would like to point out that game has a runaway leader problem. Right? The better you get at winning,
Anyway,
the more you
let's
win,
go ahead and move on.
The more you win, the more you
alpha
win.
Player, how do you feel about take-backs in co-ops?
It really is situational, really depends on the game. My rule of thumb is if vital information has been revealed, you can't go back to before that information was revealed. You can't take it back. If it doesn't really change anything about the integrity of the game, I don't really mind so much, especially if it's one of those co-ops where you're playing with new players. Sometimes they just didn't quite understand the rules the first go around, and you don't want to be that person who's like, no take-backs. If it's a new player, give them a little bit of room, a little bit of space to take things back. That's my personal philosophy. I know there are people who disagree with that, for sure.
Yeah. Kind of treat it like you do in competitive games where, like, it wouldn't have affected anything. They just forgot to do something, you know, that they were clearly going to do anyway. They just didn't, you know, had a slip of the mind and forgot to do it. Then, yeah, why not let them do it? Especially since it's a co-op. Like, they're rarer than in competitive games, but I have run across the players who are like, you know, we will not take this back. And it's just like, why? We're on the same team. Like, what does it matter?
Because if you're going to be a rules lawyer, you got to lawyer every rule.
Well, don't be a rules lawyer. That's a whole nother episode. But yeah, just, you know, because the point of the game is to have fun. So at the same time, you still want to have a competitive, or not really competitive, but challenging experience, right? So you don't want to, like, take everything back. You definitely, like, it's like a thing where if you flip a card and you have that information, you can't use that information to influence your decision. So if it was clear that they were going to do whatever they said they were going to do regardless because it just benefited them, regardless of what that card flip said, then yeah. But if clearly that card flip would have changed their decision, then yeah, I would not let them take it back. That kind of thing.
That seems logical.
No.
And probably the last thing, and it's something that you brought up before, is what do you think are some things that you can do in co-op games or some conventions you can follow in order to make them better? For me, it's timers.
That makes a lot of games better.
You want to make a lot of games better, and you want to make codenames much better, and Konami, and you know, end of all discussions, put a time limit on it, and when the sand goes off, enforce it.
Codenames comes with a timer for a reason, people. Like, so many people I see play Codenames never use that timer. And in fact, will get pissed at you when you use it. No, they put it in the box for a reason, because that game can bog down to infinity if you just let people sit there.
It's supposed to be a fast game, people.
Yeah. Like, you will, like... And sometimes it's fine, because it's like people are chilling out and they're having their conversation while the person giving the clue is just sitting there looking at the card and not making any progress. And that's fine. If y'all are having fun talking, then don't make a big deal about it. But, like, if you're trying to play more competitively, or you're not really having conversations because maybe these aren't your close friends, like maybe it's strangers at a public meetup, then maybe just get the game going. Just flip that timer. Don't be afraid to flip that timer and put the fire under the person giving the clue.
Not exactly a co-op game, but at the end of Avalon, when you're finding out who Merlin is, that should also be timed.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get an hour to discuss who Merlin is.
Yeah.
That should have been the
Not
rules,
okay.
to be
that
honest.
That should have been in the rules. It's ridiculous with our group right now.
Just
Anyways.
remember, some of the general, let's call them vanilla public games, come with timers, are hugely successful. Taboo comes with a timer.
Pictionary.
Pictionary comes with headbands. Cranium. All
Oh.
come with timers. All do incredibly well over time. And the game that doesn't, that people bitch about all the time, complain about, is Monopoly. So All right.
Gotta make a note.
Making a note. Sorry about that.
That's
All right.
fine.
So usually at this point in time, we go into a list of our top 3 games of the subject, and today is going to be co-op games, and quite a few co-op games that are out there. So I would love to hear what your top 3 are.
Let's go through our number 3s,
All right,
and we'll just walk it up.
All right.
I'll start. My third favorite, which I no longer own, but I owned for many years and played it many times, is Ghost Stories. That was the first co-op game that I ever played that I really, really enjoyed. Pure co-op. I used to like Battlestar Galactica until there was a whole fiasco, which I won't mention here, but...
We're going to play today. I brought it.
Heck no. Things that I will not be doing today. Playing Battlestar Galactica. So Ghost Stories was the first pure co-op that I played that I was like, this is interesting, this is super fun, and we played it a bunch. It is a game where it's basically 1 to 4 players, and you're really, it's one of those co-op games that's super difficult unless you play the wimpy mode with the extra life point. Don't do that. Just jump right in and play the difficult mode until you beat it. It'll probably take you several games, and then you can even ratchet up the difficulty from there. But it is a game where, you know, you have to, like, for instance, to kill a ghost in that game, you have to roll, like, between 1 to 3 die of a certain color. Each face of the die is a different color. And you have to hit those colors to be able to kill this ghost. And it's hard to just kill the peon monsters in that game, as opposed to most games where they're just cannon fodder and you just kill them.
Drop the Buddha.
Yeah.
And be calm.
And it's also the rules are terrible, so watch online videos to learn it. But once you learn the game, it's also super simple and elegant. However, I don't particularly like the expansions because I felt like they took an elegant game and then made it kind of convoluted and complicated. I know other people like the expansions, so I'm not saying they're bad, but they're just not for me. So, Abby, third favorite.
Third favorite is a game that Trey introduced to me recently, which is Spirit Island. Awesome game.
Convert.
Yes, I love it. It is, other than Mage Knight, which is exempt from all of this, it is the most complex co-op game that I've played, for sure, as far as all of the little tiny pieces that have to go together and all the events that happen in one turn. But, I don't know, it's super fun. There's a lot of variety to each game because you can choose from several different characters that you can play within the game. You want to try them all out, see which one has the best powers. Should I talk about what kind of game it is?
Yeah. Just one.
Okay, so Spirit Island is, you are all sort of the gods of this island, which is about to be colonized by invaders. It's either going to be the British or the...
Prussia.
Prussia?
France is in the expansion, and Sweden.
Or Sweden, okay. So basically you are the gods of this island and you want to protect the people who live on this island from the invaders. So you do this by sowing fear amongst them, or by shoving them into the ocean, or burning up their settlements. Yes. So there are a lot of different ways you can approach it, and generally if you play with about 4 people, you can get 4 different gods who specialize in different things, and you can really work together to drive the colonists out. It's very satisfying. You're definitely going to feel like you're going to lose about halfway through. It feels like all hope is lost, but then at some point you tend to round a corner and destroy the invaders.
This is a turning point, yeah.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah. Charles.
At number 3, I will place Marvel Legendary. And I will see my
Only
time.
3.
I will see my time. This has been talked before many times in our podcast. I like Marvel Legendary. I will specifically point out the Guardians of the Galaxy expansion. And we'll go on to the number 2 game.
Alright, my number 2, which I already actually mentioned, is Pandemic Legacy. I'm a total fanboy for the Legacy format. I know a lot of people aren't, but I'm definitely their target audience. I think, to me, that revolutionizes board gaming more than even like bringing in apps. We haven't really had a new mechanic come out in a long time, but more than any new mechanic, like I guess that kind of is a new mechanic, but just having a game that changes over time based on the decisions you make from game to game is just such a brilliant concept to me. And you could probably get me to like any game type with it. So even though I'm not huge into co-ops, and I honestly hate base game Pandemic, But taking that into the Legacy format all of a sudden made it an interesting game to me, because it's like, here's the world, and from game to game, the plague is going to spread to different areas and like make changes to the world. That was just super interesting. So, Bendigo Legacy. Oh, I'm also, these are kind of honorable mentions because I haven't played them yet, but I'm sure I'm going to love Gloomhaven and Seventh Continent. I've backed them both. I'm just waiting for both of those Kickstarters.
No. Please, edit that from your mind. He did not just endorse a Kickstarter game before he's ever played it because he backed it. I vouch for him. It's just a temporary mania. Please. Just edit. He has better sense than this, but he just spent money and it's the euphoria.
If you look at the reviews, they're almost universally heralded. So,
Oh, never heard that about Kickstarter.
What could go wrong?
In my life.
I'm sure it'll be fine. Second, number two?
Yeah.
Would be Tragedy Looper. I know I mentioned that earlier. I don't find it to be a super popular game amongst the gaming community. It's almost pure deduction, with an anime theme thrown in for extra fun. So I'm a sucker for deduction games. This really scratches that itch for me. I really enjoy it. It is one of those all versus one games. If you're going to be the one, you should really know the ins and outs of the game. It's not terribly forgiving for people who don't know how to play it. But if you're a new player to this game, it actually has some basic intro scenarios to get you going and really teach you how to play. So I think that it could be a good game for new players as well as more experienced players.
And my number 2 game is Space Alert. Also
blast from a past.
Also known as yes,
the game no one will play.
The game no one will play because it's too stressful.
So stressful.
It is the best game in the real time, I would say, co-op hardcore vein of gaming. Except it is unforgiving. If you make a mistake, you will literally make the entire ship fall like a house of cards, especially at the higher levels. I also brought it today, and we're hoping to get a few of these games played a bit more, but basically in Space Alert, you can play up to 5 players. It's a programming game, so you will program between 1 and 18 actions throughout like the 3 sort of rounds of the game. You do all this in 10 minutes. And then you spend the remaining 20 minutes going through slowly, looking at what cards you did, performing your actions, and seeing exactly how you messed up. Or succeeded. Not
likely.
But it is, it's a 10-minute game to play game. The only unfortunate thing is if you have a new player, then you have to spend about 20 minutes explaining what happened before, and you end up with 20 minutes after resolving it, which is part of the reason it doesn't see as much play as it does. But if you can get a dedicated group, this game is extremely rewarding.
If you're triggered by noises, the audio that goes with it is so stress-inducing. It has like buzzers and white noise. It's so stressful. It's such a stressful game.
Yeah.
But it's also a great game. So
I'd like to see it remade with an app that handles a lot of the upkeep. I think that would greatly improve it. And I normally don't advocate for apps in games, but to me the most annoying part about that game is not the playing it. I love like programming the cards and just seeing what happens, but I really hate like the upkeep phase, and I think that an app could take a lot of that on and really improve the system.
Well, it actually does have an app, but the app handles like the play, so you can just you can randomize the scenarios and put them together. It doesn't handle the upkeep, but it does handle like each of the scenarios are all together, so you don't have to go through the disc anymore.
Yeah,
and it really works
cool.
well. So
very cool.
Halfway there.
My number 1 is, to no one's surprise if you listen to this podcast, Spirit Island. I literally talk about it every single episode, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. And Abby already said a lot of great things about it. I'm not getting paid by Greater Than Games. I just really like that game. It's my current obsession. I'm sure once I get onto Gloomhaven, or Seventh Continent, I won't shut up about that. But right now, Spirit Island is the current game I'm playing every single weekend.
Do you want to elaborate more on Spirit Island?
No, I'll just leave it there.
I
mean, if you want me to,
No,
I can talk more about it. I have a
already
lot to
talked
say
about
about
it.
this game.
You can correct the things that I said because I've only played it a couple times. So I'm
Tell
sure
me,
it's not.
okay, tell me about how the expansions have improved it.
Expansions.
Yeah, well, there's expansion. It does make the game more complicated. I wouldn't throw it in until you play it like 5 or 6 times. But yeah, I also talked about that on an episode, so I won't elaborate.
Okay.
Yeah, I already went through the branch and claw expansion. It's super good. Buy it if you like. Well, Charles, why don't you really like Spirit Island that much? Why don't you? That could be an interesting discussion.
What?
You don't like it?
We'll talk about that on another episode. What is
man.
what is your favorite co-op game?
Number 1, classic Hanabi. Nothing can beat a good game of Hanabi if you play with people who know what they're doing. I like this game so much that when I play with new players, I kind of want to shoot myself. I can't. I honestly don't think I can play with new players anymore. It's too stressful. But if you play with people who know what they're doing and you get all 5s, it's like the best feeling in the world. You feel so accomplished. I love Hanabi.
I have a strong opinion about this. This game does not have alpha player syndrome because it's not allowed to. You're not supposed to communicate. It has what I call post-alpha player syndrome, whereas
Yes.
every game that isn't played to completion with a 100% score, you're gonna have a game or a session of about 10, sometimes even 20 minutes after the game, which can be longer than the game took itself, where they just like analyze every move that was played, every mistake. People will get made fun of. People will get bullied. People will get their intelligence called in question.
So it's basically Avalon.
Defend your life. Defend your life.
It's yeah. That game. So I've only played it. I've only gotten a perfect game once, and I refuse to play it anymore because of this. Because I no longer enjoy this session of like, let's blame the person who cost us this game. It's, you know, it can be unpleasant for the person who made the mistake.
Trey. It is.
Oh, it's blame. It's blame.
It's critical thinking. It's improving their game, improving yourself as a player. Actually, I agree with Abby. I love Hanabi. I've actually now no longer consider a game perfect unless you play it on the hardest difficulty, which is where you...
Rainbow?
No, not Rainbow.
No,
he takes it beyond Rainbow.
Rainbow.
Where you only have one copy of each rainbow number in the game. And so all those are unique, and all the 5s are unique in the game. And the normal rainbow rules apply, where you can't just say that a color is rainbow. You just have to include it in and find it.
Okay.
So.
Have y'all graduated? So when I left the Hanabi scene, basically there were like 2 rules that you had to follow, and 99% of the time you just follow those rules, and if you don't get screwed by the draw, you should win. But have y'all progressed beyond that? Is that still basically what the game is?
Which rules are you talking about? Are they rules
like,
or are they player conventions?
It's like
conventions.
Yeah, like you throw away your oldest tile,
if you have no information,
and you play
about
your
it.
newest tile.
If you gotta have order, man.
Well, we also, I mean, this is, most of it's common sense, which is why I can't play this game with stupid people. It's common sense. If you give someone a clue about one card in their hand, they should play that card. Because why else are you telling them anything about that card?
Also
like,
a 5.
Or if it's a 5, sure, but you should know whether or not you can play a 5. But if I tell you that card is green, you'd better be playing that card on your turn.
Or Abby will get very upset.
I will. I don't think that I do the 10 minutes discussion afterwards because I think I'm a fairly nice person. I don't want to shame people. But I do feel it inside. It's a bitterness.
She wants to make fun of you for 10 minutes, but she does not because she's a nice person.
I stop myself. But
because she's married to Jeffrey and friends with Ben.
Yeah, they do my job for me.
Exactly.
And Keith.
And Keith. Exactly.
They'll do my job for me.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
All right, Charles, your favorite.
Truth, all disclaimers. My number 1 was Hanabi, but since Abby took my number 1, I will bring back my battle tank of Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, my God. Fine. If we're gonna talk about it again,
Okay.
I'll tell the story. Here's why I don't play that game anymore. Is because we had a situation where someone was making the loyalty deck and they screwed up, and I was the Cylon, and I was playing an awesome game as a Cylon, but there was an extra Cylon in the game, so 3 of the 5 of us were Cylons. It should have only been 2 of us, and I was really upset because I had played a great Cylon game, and it was all for naught because we had to abandon it halfway through. I will never forgive that game. And it's not the game's fault. It is the person's fault who made the loyalty deck, but I still can't even bring myself to play that game
And any
again.
game that can engender this type of long-lasting hate is a great co-op game. Because you have it's team versus team. You have large groups of people who are all working for the same goal, occasionally different goals. The game has a number of expansions, many of which should be left behind. But if you take the best part of each of the 3 expansions, you have basically one of the best co-op games that has ever been made. It has the trader element. There are legions of great games that have made it shorter and are possibly even better, but this is...
See, I disagree. One thing I'll say for BSG, I think of the semi-co-op genre, it's probably the best, or one of the best.
It's the best of the long-format semi-co-op.
Yeah, I actually prefer Shadows over Camelot, but I guess that's not...
I forgot all about that game.
It's to me, it's BSG, but more elegant and
It doesn't take.
It doesn't take as
hours.
long.
To me,
It's a fun game. That's a good. That was actually my very first board game that I played, other than Monopoly and Clue. And it kind of got me into board gaming. So, yes, Shadows over Camelot.
I would actually take Dark Moon, which is, literally follows behind Battlestar Galactica in terms of being Battlestar Galactica Express.
Yeah.
I have to try the new expansion. I have it on order, so it should be coming soon. But as far as BSG itself goes, it's, the father of its own sort of genre. It's very good. It has terrible rules as well. Not terrible, it's just everything's in the wrong place, and that's probably about the best. But I do love it quite a bit.
Can I get your opinion? I know this wasn't in our list of things to talk about. Can I get your opinion on games that are cooperative to a certain extent because you have to beat the game, but there is one winning player?
Semi-co-op games.
Semi-co-op games.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't by the original rules, Legendary is supposed to be a semi-co-op?
Yes, Legendary is supposed to be
But most people just ignore that and just play a pure co-op because that's insanity to play it as a semi-co-op.
In the original game of Legendary, it was a semi-co-op where the person who scored the most points won the game.
Did they take that out, or they made that a variant?
Well, it's a variant now because the game was very simple. And you had, it was very easy to beat the original masterminds. And now with the expansions, which has made it much better, it's very hard to beat the mastermind. So you really pretty much have to just sort of go for it in terms of, we're all going to work together or we're all going to lose. And I don't think they have as much prize support behind it anymore. So, I mean...
I don't know.
The prize support was going on. Yeah, it was definitely the MVP.
I don't know if there's a semi-co-op game that I would even describe as good.
The reason I asked was because New Angeles has been pulled out a lot in my group.
That game is terrible.
It's so terrible.
Yeah. No, BSG is way better than New Angeles and better than Dead of Winter, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
Okay, so I'm not the only one who hates New Angeles. I just wanted to get that.
Oh, yeah, no,
it's a terrible game.
I already ranted on New Angeles on this podcast because it is not a good game. I don't even remember why it was bad. It's also kind of a forgettable game to me. It was just like...
It's not balanced remotely. It's arbitrary. You draw a card to see who your person is who you're trying to take down, but one person is immune from being taken. It's stupid. I can't even explain it, but it's not a good game. Don't play it if you like semi-co-op games.
I mean, it's the same system as BSG, but it allows even less flexibility for the players. You have if you don't have votes to overcome a vote in that game, you're just I literally can't do anything. I'm just
right.
Okay.
You can just decide to tank one person because you don't like them.
Yeah.
Would you say that the Cosmic Encounter system lends itself to being semi-co-op, though it's not?
Yeah, I never considered that a semi-co-op game because the game can't win. Right. So that's more like a spontaneous team game.
Spontaneous.
They can be won by a single player if they're really, really shady and really, really sneaky. But generally, it's
it's more of a diplomacy type game.
Yeah, it's a negotiation game.
Anyways, we get off the subject. Let's talk about new games that we played this week.
All right. I'll start off with Medici the card game, which I had no real expectations for. I'm not a big fan of Medici, but Medici the card game is nothing like the board game. It's basically a totally different experience. It's just a really, really fun filler game.
Yeah, definitely. Press your luck mechanic comes into play as opposed to the auction mechanic. And, I love it. I bought it. So, other games you played this week?
Abby, what have you played?
I've had kind of a boring week and haven't played any new games this week, which is so sad. Should it be something recent?
Yeah, it can just be recent. You haven't been since you were last on the podcast. You can literally talk about any of those games.
Oh man. Okay. I think I learned Spirit Island since the last time I was on the podcast, so that's one of my new games.
Banned. Okay. Kidding.
So sorry. Let me think about it. Come back to me and I'll think about it.
All right. Actually ended up going to Omaha, Nebraska this weekend, and I visited their great game store there, Spielbound, Spielbound. And there I met one of the designers. I think it's Marcus Roberts, but he had won the 2017 New Design Contest issued by Haba Games. So somewhere along the line, his game is going to be published, and it was called Color Spiel. And it was a very interesting game to look out for. Basically, take a color wheel of 6 colors, and then you add decks of cards numbered 1 through 9 of each of the colors. And you take from the wheel and put these cards out on a spiral, so it looks like a 6-armed starfish hanging out from it. And then you have a scoreboard with the 6 colors, and the scoreboard goes from 0 up to 10 and then goes down to 2. From that point, each player rolls the dice, and the dice are one of the 6 colors, and you must allocate 1 die to the score wheel, 1 die to taking a card from the spiral, and then you have 1 die as a wild. And it was very interesting because what ended up happening was you would try to push the score up of a color you were winning. So the color could score up to 10 points, but once it reached 10, you could start pushing it to make it score less points, like 8, then 6, then 4. And one of the round end triggers was that you got a color scoring 2 points, and then all the rest would score where they were at. The other round end was that one of the arms of the spiral was depleted. So this game was just really good. I want to say it was it didn't feel like anything. It was reminiscent of Red 7 in that vein.
I like Red 7.
Yeah, you had a lot of choices to be made because one of the things they added is you could take, instead of using your wild die, you could just use 2 die to select a color and push on that color of your choice, which added a little bit of strategy to offset any randomness. And people, it had ways to hide the numbers of the cards because only the exterior edges were revealed. But you had mechanics where you could draw a card and it would stay face down in front of you. So it was both introductory and strategic and good. And I would say it's like a perfect Haba game to get. So look out for that. And
is it going to be released this year or next year?
Probably next year because he won the design this year.
Okay, very cool. I played Codenames Duet, which I mentioned earlier is like co-op Codenames. Basically, it's designed as a 1v1, but you can actually play it with multiple people. They need to be just split the people that you're playing with on 2 different sides of the table. And basically, you're taking turns giving clues, like in Codenames, and you're trying to get the other team or the other person across the table to guess your clues and vice versa. And what makes it co-op is that there's a timer. You have a certain amount of turns to win the game in, so that's your incentive to give bigger clues, because if you give small clues, you'll run out of time and you'll lose the game. So you need to really go for those 3 to 4 clues. You don't really have a lot of time to mess around with 1 and 2 clues. And also, there's 3 assassins instead of 1, so you have to be extra careful to not hit one of those. And also, when you hit neutral cards that aren't that runs out your time as well. So it's just an interesting take on the Codenames formula, using time as a resource and doing it cooperatively as opposed to two different teams. So yeah, did you have another game?
I actually did learn a new game recently. It's a party game, and I thought of it because my friend Emma just arrived, and we played it at her birthday. It's called Hive Mind. It's a very silly game, but very fun. It's basically Family Feud. Is that what I'm thinking it is?
Yes,
Categories.
Family Feud.
Yes.
Family Feud
It's
where...
categories backwards.
No, Family Feud is what she's right. Family Feud where you're just trying to guess what's the most popular answer, not what's necessarily
that's the opposite
answer.
of categories. Categories is you try to guess things that no one else is gonna.
Okay.
So it's like the reverse.
They're
of that.
both right. It's Family Feud / opposite of categories, where you want to play with probably about 10 people because the people make up the pool of the polled people. So you want to try to guess what everyone else is guessing, because the most popular answers will gain you the most points. It'll be just fun party questions like, what are 3 animals that start with the letter R?
Rabbit. Rat.
You would be surprised at how
Rhinoceros.
nobody would think of, rhinoceros or something. You'd be surprised.
I find the way Category does it to be better. However, the one thing I will give this game over Categories is that you can create your own category when it's your turn.
Yes.
Which is, to me, the only fun thing about this game, because I love making up an obscure category and just seeing what people put up. Sometimes they can't come up with any answers, so that's very fun. So I really like that aspect of it. Otherwise, I think Categories is more interesting. Like, trying to come up with a word that no one else is going to write down, to me, is more of an interesting thing, because then it becomes like a guessing game. You're not necessarily trying to put down the first thing that springs to your mind. It's like, I know these people in this room, what are they going to write down? And then, so it becomes like a head game, and to me, it's just not as interesting. Charles?
Yeah, that game has pure anger issues. Another game with pure anger issues is Headbands. We've been playing this game here
a lot
while waiting around for stuff, and I keep asking myself, why is this a thing? Let's just put a word on top of our
It's super fun.
And ask questions about it and watch a person struggle. That's the reason why Headbands is good. You get to watch people struggle. It's especially fun when you're not even... A game is bad when it's the most fun when you're not even playing it. But then if it pulls you in when you're not playing it, then that makes the game brilliantly good. Hard to say.
Headbands is super fun, and you can buy for $10 at Walmart. So
Can I say something about headbands?
Sure.
So I teach an after-school program for refugee students who are learning English, and we use headbands all the time in our after-school program because it's a great tool for learning English vocabulary. So I give my thumbs up to headbands because it's a great ESL tool.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. Yeah, I would also say Headbands is a great game that I've owned for like 2 years, and we just finally started breaking it out, and I don't know what we were missing. It's also the quickest game. You can literally just jump into it and play it in like 2 minutes in between games while you're waiting for the other group to finish their game. So.
And you can drink a glass of wine and still play it.
Yeah. If you're of age.
Yes.
Eternally Bored does not condone underage drinking. All right. I played Aquilea. This is like a really old worker placement game. It's like 10 years old. I had never even heard of this game, but I was at my friend's house for a birthday party, and they happened to have it, and I was like, hey, I've never played that game. Let's try it out, because I like to try new games. I wouldn't necessarily seek it out or anything, but it's not a bad game. If you get a chance to play it, check it out. But it doesn't do anything... It doesn't add to the worker placement genre. It doesn't do anything new or interesting, but it is a solid game mechanically, so nothing bad to say about it, but nothing great either. Any other games for you guys?
I'm pretty much done, so you can go ahead and go through yours.
Okay. I'll save some for the next episode, but I will mention 2 more games that I played at that same party, which was Intrigue, not Intrigue. They dropped the U for some reason. This is like a... Yeah, maybe it's the German name for Intrigue, I don't know. But it's a negotiation game, and it's also a take-that game, and it's brutal. And this is a game that was super fun, but I don't know if it was the game that was fun. I think the experience was fun just because of the people I was playing it with. We got really into like the take-that aspect of it and the negotiation. There, look, mysterious person handed us the box. Amigo, if you want to kick me some advertisement money. But yeah, oh, it's by Stefan Dora. That's cool. I didn't even know that. But yeah, I don't know if this is a fun game mechanically, but if you play it with the right people who like to, like, you know, kind of take that kind of thing, and it's fairly short. The box has 45 minutes. I think that's fair. Maybe even less time. It's kind of a fun, just take that game to play with your friends. And then lastly, I finally got to play Hiroshima Hex. I had never played this game. It's a super old game that's like an abstract war game. You're basically playing this tiles on a map, and they do a certain amount of damage in a certain direction, and you can turn tiles around, or you can play new tiles. It's basically just an abstract war game.
Abstract war game. Yeah, I got it for free at BGG, and I traded it away. It's good go. It's a good game if you like that type of genre of game, but it is going to be very movement based. Yeah. However, if you don't really like war games, this is something that I think most people could get into a bit, but it's still a war game.
Yeah, I really like it because I like those kinds of games.
Very good 2-player war game too.
And it does play multiple. We actually played a 3-player game, and I quite liked it. However, this is one of those games that I think has kind of been overtaken by the app. People who play the app say it's like way better just because it handles all the upkeep and the rules for you, so you don't have to say like, oh, can this soldier hit that soldier? The app does it for you, so you don't have to think about it. So probably the app is better, but still a solid board game. So that's pretty much it. Tune in next time. We will be talking about... I blanked on the next episode subject.
We will be talking about things that Trey remembers later. Maybe Alzheimer's prevention and gaming.
We'll also...
games are good for that.
We'll also be reviewing the Exit series, of which we're about to play the last one right now, and I will talk about all 3. I have some interesting things to say about, especially the second one we played, which is Pharaoh's Tomb. But yeah, so check that out. Check us out on our website, and I'm sure in the description of this episode, I'll tell you what we'll be talking about next time. All right. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We're on YouTube, Twitter, and our Twitter handle is @EternallyBored. There's no underscore, it's just one word. And that's board as in board game. And our website is www.eternallybored.com. Again, no underscore, one word. It's board as in board game. So, yeah, that's it. Until next time, we're eternally bored, so you don't have to be.
Yay.
Bye. Let's play Exit.
Sorry I made a bunch of noise.
No, you're fine.
My brain was slow to register what was happening.
You're fine.
It's all good.